There's a middle ground in games that's kind of gone extinct. A metaphorical place where games can comfortably sit between the massive big budget AAA releases and the small indie titles. The mid-tier release. AA or mid-tier games have kind of gone by the wayside. Sure, there are still releases like Darksiders and Hellblade, but defining AAA games is murky water anyway. Days Gone is what most would call a AAA game. It's got a massive development time stretching many years, it's got millions of development and marketing dollars behind it, and maybe most importantly, it's being developed or was developed by a studio owned by Sony and published by Sony themselves. A flagship exclusive in a year that Sony has stayed quiet for the most part. Except it wasn't that flagship exclusive, for better or for worse. Instead, it's something that people seem to have forgotten even exists. Days Gone feels like the remnants of a previous generation. Days Gone has made a point, a few actually, but a main point that's both good and bad depending on who you are purchasing this game.
Hey, what the hell? Whoa, is there a problem? Huh? You wanna go?
When it comes to an open world survival game, there's essentially only one thing that makes your game worth engaging in from a survival perspective, and that's the threats that the game proffers you. The Freakers in Days Gone are good enemy design. I'm not just talking about the way they look. Yes, they look exactly like the enemies that Will Smith faces in I Am Legend, but it's actually the design of the enemies and the way they move, their pathing, that's actually really interesting. In most zombie games, you have one of two things: slow, shambling zombies that move way slower than you do, and more importantly, are not much of a threat unless you let them close in on you or let them close in on you as a group. Or the super fast, I'm gonna run at you really quickly, holy crap, these are track star zombies. But here is a great middle ground. The Freakers are absolutely a threat to the player. First off, they have pretty good AI. Their pathing is wonderful. You can hop on top of a roof, they're going to chase you up that roof. You can hop over a barrier, they're going to make their way around that barrier. They're going to get to you one way or another. They are very difficult enemies to outsmart. You're not going to simply walk back and forth behind a table and watch them play musical chairs with you. Instead, these are fast-moving threats that move as a group more often than not. They will close in on you extremely quickly. If you try to melee them, they will dodge your melee attacks every once in a while and parry them, counter them. These aren't just gun or melee fodder. These things make you think. Days Gone's enemy variety is a little, well, varied as well. The human AI is pretty good. They will use cover smartly, they will move back and forth. Between two sets of cover, there will be enemies that will come up on you, rush you, flank you. Days Gone can and will challenge you, but mostly because of the AI design and the enemy variety. This is something Bend nailed. And in between all of these human, freaker, AI, you will get some boss fights, this giant bear, the Reacher, and that'll help mix things up a bit. But Days Gone would have failed spectacularly if the freakers were not interesting enemies, just the regular freakers you see coming in hordes by themselves. If they weren't smart enough, nimble enough, and dangerous enough to keep you on your toes for 35 to 40 hours, this game would have been a nightmare. And for a 40-hour experience, while the enemy variety isn't great across the board, you are only getting a couple types of freakers and one or two types of human AI. It's serviceable across that time frame. But where Days Gone is going to lose a lot of people or gain them is in its overarching gameplay loop.
My God, Rick, how dumb are you? You're inside a simulation of a simulation inside another giant simulation.
The gameplay loop of Days Gone is where the game, again, is either going to hook people or lose them entirely. Days Gone moves both from a gameplay and narrative perspective at almost a leisurely pace. This isn't a game where you're rushing to cure the entire apocalypse. This isn't a game where you're trying to bring Ellie to a doctor before they disappear. No, you're just kind of doing stuff, just trying to survive. And I think that's cool. I think a lot of zombie stories that don't focus on a cure, and I'm not intimating that there's none of that in this game, but what I am saying is for most of your time playing it, that's not the inherent focus necessarily. The focus is on Deacon and Boozer, almost exclusively throughout at least the first half of the game, and it creates a pretty simple gameplay loop that again is kind of leisurely. You'll hit the Nero stations, which are going to give you your health, stamina, or focus upgrades. Then you hit some enemy outposts, as per usual with open world games. You'll take out some freaker nests to unlock fast travel spots, and then you'll do some hordes as kind of an endgame activity. This really is the gameplay loop of Days Gone. Your missions aren't going to really expand out beyond simply go here, kill this enemy camp. Every once in a while, you'll chase somebody down on your bike in what is some serviceable vehicle combat. A lot of times, and I talked about this on my second channel, What's So Great, in the video I did over there about Days Gone, and I'll put a link to that in the description down below, as well as the pinned comment. But the vehicle combat is a microcosm of what Days Gone is. It's extremely simplified. It's a gameplay loop anybody can understand. You get on your bike, you drive. You take out your weapon, you wait till the reticle gets smallest, you fire it. No aiming, none of that, and that's really great for bike combat because it prevents it from being a huge, clustery mess of nonsense that's incredibly difficult to control, like so many open world games proffer to players when it comes to vehicle combat. But that microcosm extends out beyond that. Combat is fairly simple. You have your simple melee attacks, a dodge, a roll, and the weapons you get, as limited as your loadout may be, all work well. They all have great feedback. They're all visceral to use. They're a good time. But after 1, 2, 3, 4 Nero stations, enemy outposts, Freaker's Nest, eventually you're left asking yourself, hey, if the main missions are only giving me different variations of these very things, I'm throwing a couple of different interesting, unique, idiosyncratic enemies in there, how long until this stops being interesting? And for a lot of people, that's going to be never. For me, for example, I got through the entire game and didn't have any problem with these things. I didn't feel it was too repetitive, but from an objective standpoint, it is repetitive, and a lot of people are going to be lost by that. Are you going to be someone that falls into my camp that thinks, hey, it's fun enough, I don't care? Maybe, but you might also be one of the people that say, hey, enough is enough, I've done this too many times. So where the game attempts to keep you hooked is its attempt at being an immersive sim.
No, that's it.
And then?
No and then. That's all I want.
And then?
So for those of you that did see my Days Gone video on the What's So Great channel, I talked a lot about Days Gone's attempt at being this kind of pseudo-immersive sim and how much the bike has to do with that. Your bike is your best friend in Days Gone, and for me, that's a great thing. They did not skimp on how you traverse this world, but more importantly, they didn't skimp on how you survive in it mechanically. Let's look at the bike. The bike can run out of fuel. It runs out of fuel very easily. If it does, you either have to find a gas station to fill it up, or find a tank of gas and fill it up there. If you run out of gas, however, you can stay on your bike and continue to roll. If you find enough hills or enough slopes, you can actually ride that bike all the way to where you need to go if you play your cards right, just like you would on a real motorcycle. Better yet, the bike can break down. If it breaks down, you have to get off and use scrap you find in the world to repair it. One way to prevent it from breaking down, when you're in the air and you land on your bike on both wheels, it will damage your bike. However, to continue that immersive sim approach, if you land your bike completely parallel to the ground, you will take less fall damage to the bike. Even the bike itself, when it breaks down, moves just fast enough to outrun freaker wards, so you don't have to worry about them and make the bike a chore. And this extends out into the world too. You'll use gas tanks to start generators at Nero stations. You literally will have to push cars out of tunnels, out of your way to pass through them on your bike. Days Gone's world is meant to make you feel like you're surviving in it. You'll have to craft your own bandages. You'll have to craft your own special ammo. It takes as many steps as possible to make you feel like you're doing enough mechanically to stay interested in that moment-to-moment gameplay. And I think in this one way, Days Gone succeeds. There's not a lot of negative for me here. Whether it's a streamlining of the crafting wheel, or how freakers respond to light, I feel like what Ben accomplished was creating a zombie apocalypse that you felt like you yourself were at least attempting to survive in, even with the faults. But I think we can't talk about an open world game without talking about, well, the world. And here's another hit and miss place. I have seen a lot, and I mean a lot of talk about how the world that is built here, this fictional location in the north of the United States, this place that seems to be kind of modeled after Oregon, but not really, but has Oregon landmarks, but isn't Oregon, how it's boring to traverse, how it's uninteresting, how its locale seems to repeat itself, and I agree and I disagree. I think the world's density needed some work. There are probably far too many wide open spaces, but what is there, what you can explore, and there's a lot to explore here, is very interesting. This feels like a real world, but I want to talk about some things I haven't talked about before. Yes, much of this map is themed after kind of a small, like I said, Oregonian town. Is Oregonian a word? I don't know. But what I find so spectacular about this world, the parts of it you can explore, is that it feels like it was just lived in. It doesn't feel like it's been abandoned for an extremely long time. It feels like you just kind of missed the start of the apocalypse, and you did. The game starts taking place only just over 2 years after this all began, and you can feel that. Stores and motels are still in relatively good shape. There are safes that haven't been raided, TVs still up, standing perched on dressers. Better yet than that, gas stations still function. And towns and traders have built themselves up enough so that there seems like there was a world that was here and a world that is now. You can feel that dichotomy, you can feel that juxtaposition. However, so much of this world feels like it's begging for something to be there, something to exist within it. The map has a whole lot of markers, and clearing them is a good time, but so many of those markers are kind of meaningless. Even locations like the hot springs that you're seeing here could be far more interesting than they really are, but more importantly, denser. This is a giant space, and really it's just one building in the middle of a kind of hilly juncture. There are towns in the game, small sects of what civilization was, and those are so interesting. Those are so immersive. But when so much of the rest of it feels like a missed opportunity, in terms of theming, in terms of locales, it hurts a little bit. Do I think there's enough to do in the world to justify making it more dense? Not really, and that's a problem of the game and a fault of the game, but I do think that this world had a lot of potential, and I do think that if you really explore it, if you take the time to find the spots that are worth exploring, it is an incredibly good time. But this is where we're going to start to get to the main point that Days Gone has made, and that's its kind of mid-tierness. But we have to get to the real bad stuff.
No, God! No, God, please, no! 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 No!
Look, if you haven't noticed by now, both from my video over on What's So Great and this, I really like Days Gone from a totally subjective standpoint. I love what I played in Days Gone. I love what I played all the way through it, and I even love what I'm playing in the endgame. A part of that I think is because I'm visiting the game a couple of weeks after launch, and another part of that I think is that I came in with absolutely no expectations, and that I like the kind of goodness that it has. I like that it sits in a place that isn't great but isn't bad, but it wasn't always in that place, even in its short life so far. When the game launched, it was a buggy mess. There was clipping issues, bug missions that prevented the game from being completed, and a host of frame rate issues, which is part of the reason I waited so long to do this video. Because I wasn't playing it. I waited until a couple patches. Today, most of these problems have been nipped in the bud. The stuttering is all but absent on the PS4 Pro, the bug missions have been narrowed down to one main problematic mission, and the clipping, while still problematic, is a bit less problematic. See, Days Gone's problems are actually in what Ben built from the ground up. Days Gone was built like a AA game, from top to bottom. Being that it was Ben's first real attempt at a full-blown console IP, it's almost unsurprising. The game is a bit too long, its story lacks focus and meanders in the back half, it starts to slow, its gameplay loop may be a bit too repetitive, it's everything you'd expect from a mid-tier game. A giant outing that's fun to play, a good time, but isn't going to take the world by storm, and certainly won't be considered one of the greatest games of its generation. And it wasn't hard to see this from the outset. Ben is a studio that for the past 2 generations essentially hasn't done much of anything outside of PSP and PlayStation Vita games. They're the people that made Uncharted Golden Abyss, they're the people that made Uncharted Fight for Fortune. So this first real crack at a modern, this generation release was bound to have issues. But I think it's more than that. Sony never really marketed Days Gone. Sony never seemed to have any faith in not only the IP, but the game itself. They would show it at E3s, but they'd never really talk about it. The game was a mystery, essentially up until these last couple of months. No one really knew what to expect, no one knew when it was coming, and it didn't look spectacular every time it was shown. It always looked like exactly what it became. People would walk away from the E3 demos, they'd walk away from the showcases and say, hey, this looks fine. Is anybody excited about this? Maybe a little bit. Okay, cool. And people would move on. It wasn't winning Game of Show. It wasn't taking over the web. It wasn't making the front pages of the IGNs and Kotakus of the world. It just kind of was there. It's almost like Sony said, hey, we need a game to kind of cap off this generation. We need an exclusive. We need something for this year. We need something earlier in the year. What do we got? Days Gone just kind of filled that slot. And I don't know if that's because Ben had complications in developing the game. I don't know if that's because of the delays. I'm not sure that Sony ever had faith in it. I wonder if Ben did. But Days Gone feels like a game that didn't have that kind of support. It feels like a game that everybody making it knew wasn't going to be this home run. A game that everybody knew might be a single or a double. A game that everybody knew wasn't going to be the start of some new massive IP. It was going to be a cool, fun experience to cap the generation. And it's not gamers' fault that everybody went into it expecting the next Last of Us. That was kind of the vibe that Sony gave off. That was kind of the vibe that all the demos gave off, especially once Boozer was introduced. And I think the sales are going to show just that. Look, Days Gone is not bad, not at all. Its sins have been overblown dramatically. Days Gone simply just is. It's got a lot to love, but its faults keep it from standing tall with its exclusive brothers. But I think the biggest point that Days Gone makes, the thing that led to this video being made, is that maybe games can just be good again. Maybe there's still a place for mid-tier experiences. Maybe we need to see the return of the AA sector. Days Gone feels like a game that had way too much money poured into it, and a game whose returns might not be worth the amount of investment. It feels like a game whose scope was maybe a bit too wide for the time frame they were given, the experience they had, and the money in front of them. It feels like a game that let the eyes of grandeur get a hold of it, and a studio that didn't know how to rein that in. I like Days Gone. I think a lot of people, if you look past the negativity surrounding it, are going to like it too. But I also think Days Gone is probably worth $30 to $40. I think it's a game that didn't need to be even close to as long as it is. Honestly, 20 hours, half its length probably would have been great. I think it's a game that needed somebody to come in and say, hey, we don't need you to be the next Last of Us. We don't need you to be the next GTA for zombies. We need you to be a good experience, a shorter experience, an experience more refined in scope, and the studio needed to go from there. So if you're wondering, should I buy Days Gone? Should I play Days Gone? Well, I do have a video on the What's So Great channel. I'll link it in the description below, as well as a pinned comment. You can check out all the great stuff, only the good stuff over there. A whole list of 94 things that I don't really talk about here. And you heard the negative stuff here. You can decide for yourself. What I will say with certainty is that there is a market for Days Gone. I've had a ton of fun with Days Gone. I haven't regretted a moment I've spent with it, but I would argue that maybe $60 might be just too much. But now, I want to know what you guys think. Have you played Days Gone? Are you interested in Days Gone? What's keeping you from playing Days Gone? And most importantly, what do you want to see Sony do? What franchise do you want to see them return to? Do you want to see a Days Gone 2? Do you want to see Ben set on something else? Do you want to see the revival of Sly Cooper? Do you want to see the revival of Jak and Daxter? Where should Sony go with their exclusive? What can they put them on that you would purchase, that you would play? Let me know the answer to any of those questions down in the comments below. As most of you know, and honestly, I put it in the video, mostly because a lot of you are probably wondering, hey, you've already covered Days Gone. It's because they're two different videos. I have started a new channel with my good friend Jordan. That channel is all about the positive stuff in gaming and only the positive stuff in gaming. I get it. He's Clean Prince. He's the negative guy. All YouTubers hate games. All YouTube gamers are all people that despise the hobby. They just do it for money. We get it. It's not true. I love games. Jordan loves games. And we wanted to find a place where we could just talk about the good stuff in gaming. Kind of like a reverse Cinema Sins or like a gaming Cinema Wins. A place where we could get away from the more review style content and just do something that was fun, something that, you know, kind of digs underneath all of the drama and all of the, I don't know, stuff you see in the AAA space to get something good. We take a look every single week, 3 times a week, at games that are terrible. We take a look at games that are great. We take a look at games that are mediocre. And underneath the review scores, underneath all the hype, we find the good that's underneath there, because every game is made by talented developers, talented artists, and sure, they're put out by terrible people a lot of the times, big business suits that don't care about anything but money, but there are people that really care behind these things, and we want to find the things they made, the good stuff. And that's exactly what we do over on What's So Great. Like I said, I'm going to link the channel in the description, in the pinned comment down below. We've already done an episode on Days Gone. You can check that out. But again, that's not a review channel. What it is essentially, take Days Gone for an example. Days Gone is a game that, you know, in a review context, isn't perfect. In fact, companies like IGN gave it a 6 out of 10. So what we do is we look past all of that and we just say, okay, is there good in here? If you've already bought the game, that's a channel where you're going to find the stuff that's going to justify your purchase. If you are on the fence about buying the game and you're not sure about all the hype, that's a place we can find out, hey, here's the stuff that's actually worth playing inside of this. That's that channel, What's So Great. If you support this channel, go over there and subscribe to that one. Maybe watch a video or two. You have no idea how helpful that is. It's not replacing Clean Prince. Clean Prince obviously is going to continue. That channel started a while ago. Clean Prince is still getting uploads, so there's that. But yeah, go over there, hit subscribe. Hit subscribe over here if you'd like to. Support both channels. You get the good, you get the bad, you get everything. And until next time, guys, I'm out.